The path to the hyperego. The evolution and the human. A lot has been written, and even more has been said about what a human being is and what his life course should be. So the modern thinker comes to wonder, why is there so much dispersion of opinion? Is there, or is there not, a therefore, to sum up all in one accepted position? I will honestly answer that I do not know. My personal conclusion has to do with what I read and think, but I have not studied every single point of view. In the course of my life, I followed various paths, each of which led me to new pathways that fortunately converged from a certain point forward. Do not misunderstand when I write I followed different paths. All people, even those who don't admit it, follow their own path that eventually leads them to the end they have unconsciously set. Life itself has its own path for which it fights to the finish. The thing is that humans, by default, follow life's path and build sidewalks that believe will help him. Since my goal is to refer to the therefore, I will overlook the set course that we follow as life or humanity and focus on the individual course. Man as a being belongs to the symbiotic units, and this is not something that can be called into question. He has cells, organs, a nervous system. He has plenty, but each one of these has its own conscience, no matter how low it is. When some of them come together, they create something like hyper-consciousness, which now expresses the new set. And that doesn't stop there, because when these temporary sets create a bigger one, and a new consciousness emerges. At the level of consciousness, I would say that the latest belongs to a higher level. This goes on for the human until he reaches the level where consciousness is recognized as the human ego, and the levels of consciousness stop. If some suggest that consciousness is only about the brain functions, they are barking up the wrong tree. It's one thing that the brain is the organ on whose function the ego is based, and another to identify these two as one. What we could state with certainty is that the ego begins its formation at birth and ends at death. Unfortunately, everyone, or even more, every philosophical, social, or metaphysical group has something to say about the ego, self-knowledge, improvement, etc. If you are in the right mood or have the time, you will follow one. All, and I mean all, of these groups, Freemasonry, Martinism, Christianity, etc., claim the same thing. They refer to the optimal formation of the ego within the social realm. Nobody talks about the therefore. Everyone mentions bits and pieces and lets you figure out the rest. What is the question? This freaking divine spark that even all theists admit that exists. Some put it very high, others very low, and generally fool around with it. What's the worst? That they argue with each other like it is their property. At least by definition, this spark is a consciousness of an even higher level. It is some ego who, on the evolutionary scale, is one step above, since it is above the essence that characterizes what we understand. Let's refer to it as the hyperego, to set a base ground to communicate. Conclusion. On one hand is ego, on the other the hyperego. The first and the second are degrees of consciousness, while in the middle stands the human being, trying to figure out what to do. The question is, can a human being in life pass on the conscious information of the ego to the hyperego? And if he can, what does that mean? What if he fails? This is the question. Oh, let me add, we will all deal with this at some point. Did you expect anything different?